Losing a valuable personal item usually triggers an immediate, solitary panic, as if resolving the loss is entirely our own burden.
That is a very human reaction, but I wonder if the real challenge is not finding the object, but overcoming our pride.
Welcome to tonight's episode of Late Night Insightful English Shadowing, designed for advanced C1 and C2 English learners.
Tonight, we are exploring a surprisingly complex human experience, the act of asking for help when we lose something precious.
It sounds like a simple, practical problem, yet it exposes deep assumptions about autonomy, social friction, and personal pride.
Outside, the city has quieted down, and the rain against the glass reminds us how isolating a sudden loss can feel.
Think about the last time you mislaid your wallet, your phone, or a sentimental piece of jewelry in a public space.
In that precise moment, a subtle shift occurs. Your familiar environment suddenly feels unpredictable and slightly indifferent to your distress.
We often treat losing an item as a personal failure, an embarrassing lapse in concentration that we must quietly rectify ourselves.
That instinct to search silently in isolation often stems from a fear of imposing on strangers or appearing careless.
I remember losing a folder of critical notes late one evening in a crowded university library several years ago.
Did you immediately ask the library staff for assistance, or did you retrace your steps in complete silence first?
I spent 45 anxious minutes searching under tables alone, driven by an irrational reluctance to admit my mistake to anyone.
That reaction rests on the assumption that asking for help signals incompetence, rather than a reasonable response to bad luck.
I am not entirely persuaded that it is just about pride. Perhaps we simply fear the awkwardness of public rejection.
There is some truth in that, but reaching out actually transforms a solitary crisis into a shared human interaction.
That distinction is worth examining closely. There is a profound difference between passive vulnerability and constructive vulnerability.
Passive vulnerability leaves us feeling exposed and helpless, whereas constructive vulnerability prompts us to engage with others assertively.
When we enlist help, we extend a subtle vote of confidence in the community surrounding us at that moment.
Here's our first golden sentence.
Seeking assistance during a moment of personal loss is not a confession of weakness, but a courageous act of trust.
There is an important idea inside that sentence, highlighting how vulnerability can actually build unexpected social connections.
Let us practice shadowing this first golden sentence together, paying attention to rhythm, natural pauses, and deliberate emphasis.
Listen closely to the full sentence first. Seeking assistance during a moment of personal loss is not a confession of weakness, but a courageous act of trust.
Now, let us break it down into manageable thought groups for clear delivery.
Repeat after me. Seeking assistance during a moment of personal loss
Seeking assistance during a moment of personal loss
is not a confession of weakness,
is not a confession of weakness,
but a courageous act of trust.
but a courageous act of trust.
Now, let us combine the whole sentence smoothly. Seeking assistance during a moment of personal loss is not a confession of weakness, but a courageous act of trust.
Notice how placing slight stress on weakness and trust sharpens the intellectual contrast within the statement.
Imagine a scenario where a professional misplaced an encrypted corporate laptop in a bustling transit hub during a business trip.
The immediate impulse might be to conceal the loss temporarily out of fear of professional embarrassment or immediate judgment.
Yet, delaying the request for help only compound the problem, allowing valuable time to slip away needlessly.
If they approach transit officials promptly with clear, composure-driven language, they shift the focus from blame to resolution.
Precisely. Approaching security with diplomatic authority changes the dynamic from an awkward plea to a collaborative effort.
Let us examine the advanced language we have used so far to describe this delicate social navigation.
We use the phrase to rectify a mistake, which means to correct or set right a troubling situation.
We also introduced constructive vulnerability, an advanced collocation describing openness that leads to positive action rather than helplessness.
Consider the expression to retrace one's steps, an idiomatic phrase meaning to return along the exact path recently taken.
Another useful term is imposing on someone, which implies burdening another person with an inconvenient or awkward request.
We also spoke of diplomatic authority, describing a manner of speaking that is polite yet firm, clear, and persuasive.
Finally, notice the verb to mislay, which subtly implies a temporary, accidental loss rather than permanent destruction.
Let us pause for a moment and reflect on your own tendencies when faced with an unexpected loss.
How do you typically balance the desire for self-reliance with the practical necessity of asking strangers for assistance?
A strong C1 response might be, I tend to exhaust my own options first, though I recognize that timely intervention often prevents compounding difficulties.
Beyond the immediate retrieval of lost objects, this topic raises broader questions about how modern societies handle vulnerability.
In highly independent cultures, asking for help can carry an unfair stigma, framing interdependence as an inconvenience.
Yet, when we lost something and seek help, we briefly break down the artificial barriers that separate strangers.
That may be true in principle, but we must acknowledge that people often hesitate because public spaces feel increasingly disengaged.
That is a fair objection, but structured environments like lost and found offices exist precisely to formalize acts of assistance.
Reaching out in those spaces requires us to frame our request clearly, concisely, and without unnecessary emotional drama.
Here is our second golden sentence.
Articulating a request for help with clarity and poise turns a moment of vulnerability into an exercise in effective communication.
That gives us something practical to carry forward, especially when navigating stressed, high-stakes environments.
Let us begin our second shadowing exercise, focusing on clear cadence, contrastive stress, and diplomatic confidence.
Listen to the entire sentence first. Articulating a request for help with clarity and poise turns a moment of vulnerability into an exercise in effective communication.
Let us divide this thought into distinct, natural sound units.
Repeat after me. Articulating a request for help.
Articulating a request for help.
With clarity and poise.
With clarity and poise.
Turns a moment of vulnerability.
Turns a moment of vulnerability.
Into an exercise in effective communication.
Into an exercise in effective communication.
Now, speak the entire sentence aloud with me. Articulating a request for help with clarity and poise turns a moment of vulnerability into an exercise in effective communication.
Focus on maintaining a calm, even tone throughout the phrase. Clarity and poise to convey emotional self-control.
Consider how you would articulate a request if you lost a personal bag in a busy international hotel lobby.
Rather than saying vaguely that your bag is gone, a composed response provides precise markers and clear timestamps.
You might say to the front desk, I appear to have mislaid a black leather document folder near the lounge area approximately 20 minutes ago. Could you kindly verify if it has been handed in?
Notice how that phrasing remains impeccably polite while offering actionable details that allow staff to assist efficiently.
How would you respond if an initial query receives a lukewarm or indifferent reaction from staff?
A well-formulated answer could be, while I understand this is an inconvenient request, the contents are time-sensitive, so I would truly appreciate your checking the log once more.
That balanced approach demonstrates persistence without resorting to aggressive or demanding language.
What strategies do you employ to maintain composure when explaining a sudden loss in a professional setting?
A structured answer might sound like, I focus entirely on objective details, outlining the timeline clearly to facilitate a swift, collaborative solution.
Bringing our reflection together, losing an object tests far more than our memory or spatial awareness.
It tests our willingness to bridge the gap between ourselves and others, transforming an isolated inconvenience into a moment of connection.
While the initial panic of losing something is universal, our choice to ask for help with grace is entirely within our control.
We hope tonight's conversation offers both linguistic precision and a useful perspective for your daily life.
Thank you for sharing this quiet late-night space with us to refine your English and reflect on subtle human dynamics.
Until next time, when you next mislay something precious, will you treat asking for help as a burden or as an opportunity to trust the people around you?